Hello,
Hey,
Jennifer.
hi. Hi, Justin. First of all, this is so cool to be able to do this. I interview a lot of people over Zoom for a project I'm doing, and it's kind of exhausting. So I'm glad that we're going to be sharing the role of the
Well,
interview.
I'm glad we have an expert in the room because I don't interview anybody over Zoom. This is all very
Oh,
new, but it's exciting to talk to you. We met once a while back when I was lucky enough to work with your sister on a project. Um, and yeah, I've always been wanted to follow up on that and speak to you further. So what a great opportunity.
yeah, very cool.
Um,
So I just want to let me ask you a few questions before we get into this,
sure.
because I'm fascinated. I mean, the minute I walked onto your set here in Barrie, first of all, I'll rewind. My sister Sarah is an actor. She works all over the world and has never worked anywhere remotely close to me. So when she called me and said I booked a movie and is shooting in Barrie, I was like, wait, they shoot movies in Barrie? Because I'm so in my own zone, and so much of the work that I do is even outside of Ontario or outside of Toronto for sure, but never Barrie. So when I drove to your set, and it's your studio, right? That's your studio,
Yeah, partner with it. Yeah.
right? I was like, I was so in awe of just everything. I felt like I was walking into a film set for the first time. First of all, it was beside my naturopath. Second of all, it was like 5 minutes from my house. And then you had like this massive film set and a whole crew, and it was just so amazing. And yeah, so I was really excited and inspired and very impressed at the whole operation. And the movie was great. And all the work that you do is you've really found a niche. And I haven't seen your new movie, but why don't we just start there? Tell me a little bit about yourself, Justin, and what the heck do you do?
Well, I am a director. I was born and raised in Barrie. I went to Ryerson University, lived in Toronto for a while, and came back to Barrie for what I thought would be a temporary stint while I sort of try to get a film career up off the ground. And then I stayed here, and I just found the more work I was doing, I was working as a cinematographer and an editor. Um, and every piece of work I got was never in the city. I was traveling to Guelph or Hamilton or up north, up to Muskoka, Owen Sound, all over the place. So there was never a reason to move to Toronto because I never got work in Toronto. I just kept going, and then I was lucky enough to come across an executive producer who lived in Newmarket, and she was working on some projects, and I went up just as a daily cinematographer. And then they said, "Oh, we got to get this posted out in Montreal." And I said, "Well, I can post it. I've got a small studio up in Barrie." So invited her up, and yeah, that was the first project of many. And then we started working together. And then we needed a studio space, so we put that together here in town. And yeah, luckily, I was lucky enough to find her name's Beth Stevenson, this producer who's making a lot of content, and I like making the content. So there was a good partnership, and we've created this little niche north of Highway 9. So
Wow.
yeah, so that's who I am and why I am here. Now, as you said, your work is all over the world. You do tons of international projects. So what are you doing here?
Well, I don't really do international projects. I have sold projects internationally, as I'm sure you have, probably many more than I have. But I guess because I was born and raised in Toronto, came to Barrie 10 years ago, mostly because my mom at the time lived in Aurelia, and I just had a baby, and the film industry often took me, whether I was an actor, producer, or director, outside of Toronto. And I was like, what's the point of raising my family here when it's, first of all, so expensive, second of all, I don't really work here, and production is everywhere. So I started to look in this area and really fell in love with it. And I've always been a content creator who sort of works from home
Hmm.
and then travels for the work I create. That's essentially like the structure of how it goes for me. I would love to shift that paradigm and be more in your position. I really would. I guess the only thing is that most of the content I do is really it's exclusively Indigenous content. So until I find a way of, localizing that in terms of maybe, renting your studio and building a set and all of that stuff, I probably will continue to work kind of across the country and into the States,
Right.
just because that's where the content is, especially from a documentary perspective. But yeah, I definitely would prefer to work closer to home. I prefer to drive to work. I mean, that's awesome. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I've lived here for 10 years and definitely will never go back to Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny that both of us find that even though that's where so many people we work with live, we're never working there. Unless you're at Pinewood Studios, even the smaller shows, like things that shoot in Toronto, like Good Witch, or I'm blanking. There's obviously tons of stuff shoots out of Toronto, and they're always traveling. They're always shooting. Some actually even shoot up here as quietly as they
No,
can.
absolutely. I just did a Departure TV series as an actor, and obviously it was a Toronto job. So I have an agreement with my agent that if I'm going to do work, it has to be local because I don't really want to travel. Where did I go? I went to Orangeville. I went to Brantford. I went to like all over the place and not Toronto. So yeah,
Right.
most people are shooting out in these regions.
Yeah. So it's, as long as you can figure out a way to network outside of the city, you can make it work and not live right in there. Now it's getting easier and easier. With this pandemic, it's saved us a ton of money. I'm taking meetings in LA and no one wants you to come anymore. So you're just like, let's just do a Zoom, and that's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing. I am busier than ever. I've had to take a lot of stuff off my plate because of the Zoom thing. It's just been all the, let's say take a film festival, for example. Like you just finished a film. It screened at the drive-in, right?
We screened it at the drive-in. That was part of the Barrie Film Festival. Other ones we did were Fantasia, which was a big genre festival out of Montreal. And then we did the Blood in the Snow Film Festival. It's a horror film. And then we did a sort of a U.S. collaboration festival. It's called Night Stream, and that was a collaboration of 5 different festivals that all had to shut down this year. But they still wanted to to service their fans, so they put together an online festival. And it's nice that they could keep going, but it's certainly not the same trying to release an independent film in a world without festivals.
Absolutely. But I mean, on the flip side, not that the audience is anywhere close to what it would be at a live film festival, but you had the opportunity to show it in Barrie at the drive-in, which was live, and you saw real human beings there. But I'm sure all the other festivals that you did were virtual.
Yes, they were.
So in what world would you have been able to travel to all of those festivals and back to back or whatever it was, and attend them all and do panels or whatever they were asking you to do?
Yeah, definitely.
So there's positives and negatives. So is it being well received? I've seen very good things about it. I'd love to see it.
It is. We're very lucky. We're getting great reviews. We've been picked up on Super Channel here in Canada, so you can screen it on demand on Super Channel Fuse right now.
Amazing.
And then we got picked up as a Shutter original in the U.S., United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. So it's getting out there. So we're really happy with it. Really proud of it.
You shot it here in Barrie?
We did, yeah. We shot it at the writer, a local writer here, Keith Cooper. We shot it at his house. We shot one day at my house. The ultimate indie film. And then we shot downtown, and then we shot a little bit at the Cookstown Library. And the most important one of all is we built a set in the Uptown Theater. So we took Cinema 3, we pushed all the lounge chairs to the back, and we actually built a set in there, which was such a great way for me to say goodbye to the theater that is slowly closing down. Because that's where I grew up and fell in love with movies. So it was nice to go and actually make an indie film there before it went away. So that was amazing. That was nice.
That is so bittersweet.
It is, yeah. So
okay, wow, that's so exciting. That's great.
But I feel like we could get bogged down talking about making movies in COVID because it's so relevant, but this will pass eventually. So we probably should talk a little bit about, a world without a pandemic in it.
Yeah.
So like, where do your ideas come from when you sit down and make a project?
Um, a lot of different places. I have this weird thing that happens, especially when it comes to narrative content. And, you know, I don't have like a huge list of drama that I've done. I'm in post for a drama series. I've done a feature film, and I've written like maybe 5 or 6 television series, like dramatic television series. So I'm saying that because it's not like I'm churning out, you know, the dramatic television series. But
So what was the number again? 5 or 6, you said?
well, that's in development. So
That's churning out.
well, that's in development. I don't know that they're ever going to get made. But as a writer, what happens to me is I literally get visited by, like, not spirits and like anything like that, but it's like the energy of a character. So it's usually less about a story, and I'll bring a character into like my vortex. So let's say there's a story that I want to tell. I'm exploring this idea of a story, and then I'll think about a character, and then she or he really won't leave me alone. And that's kind of how I determine if I have to do a specific story, because the characters are already have life in them, and sometimes they don't leave me alone. So I have to, do that character or that story justice, because I do feel like it's coming, like I'm being pushed to tell it. So I would say that my process usually begins with characters that are already sort of
Yeah.
I guess in my mind. They're in my mind, but they feel very alive to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, very cool. Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite, and yet they're so intertwined. As I always gravitate towards plot. Um, is I wonder, wouldn't it be incredible if this happened, or what would happen if someone was, thrust into that world, and then the characters come afterwards. I think Robert McKee said character is plot, plot is character, but there's still somewhat separated in my head, and I think of the situations and I just think, whoa, that would be incredible. Or something, some incredible news piece I read about something terrifying and, science fiction-y that's coming, and just
Yeah.
wonder what's the story that could come from there.
Yeah,
Um,
I share that too. Like
mhm.
where like do you ever sort of feel like you want to try something structurally and then obsess over it a little bit, or you can obsess a little bit, you obsess over it in terms of like how you might make that structure work with a specific, like, and then the story comes, like, I mean, a structure like a horror movie, for example. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily that you thought of the story, but was it more like, I want to do a horror movie? I wonder if I could do a horror movie.
Yes, there's a lot of that. And I'm a very commercial director. I spend most of my time doing movies of the week. I'm delivering a product for a client, really is what I'm doing for the most part. I've done music videos over the years. I did some short films without much success. I found I was always trying to tell a full 3-act structure in a short film timeline, which really doesn't work. I'm just not good at short films. And this horror movie that we just finished really is the first one that is a, sort of from concept to delivery, really from I guess from my heart is what I sort of the story I want to tell. It's something that's important. I'm not just delivering entertainment for, a certain client. So unfortunately, a lot of my time is spent thinking what is commercial, what can we do that people are going to want to see, especially when coming up with these, romance or kids and family. I actually enjoy working in that because you can get sort of, outside the box and come up with some new fresh ideas. You just have to make it, nice and kid friendly, of course.
Yeah.
But then the Christmas movies and stuff, they're relatively the same. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. But yeah, it's a wonderful day job, as I say. Like I get to make these movies and work with these actors and tell these stories. And even if they are somewhat repetitive, it's still a great way to spend a day. So
that's so true.
yeah, it's great, but it's certainly not as creatively fulfilling as all the stuff you do, I can imagine.
I think sometimes, I guess it's just a little bit of the grass is always greener, because I feel like I would like to do a little bit of commercial stuff. It's just really hard when I'm constantly being told that my content, or let's just say, if I put a Native person in a lead role in a movie, that I'm being told right off the bat that that's not sellable. Like, I can't, no, we're not going to be able to sell it, in the foreign market. No one's going to come and see it in the theater. It's a, direct to video kind of thing because of that lead character's ethnicity. And I'm just not willing to compromise on that to make it, it's like, well, what am I here for? There's lots of people who could put white people in movies.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are going to put Native people in movies. And I'm pretty sure that's what I'm here for. So it's hard to play in the commercial world for me, but it must be fun.
Is that changing at all? I've been directing professionally for like 7 or 8 years, and that's not very long, but in my earlier movies, you could look at the call sheet, and you could, ethnicity would go in sort of a scale. Number one, it was always going to be Caucasian and blonde, and then it would get more diverse the smaller the roles were. And it always bothered me. We're finally happy. Like, it was a big deal when there was an interracial kiss on one of the networks for these, movies of the week. So we are starting to hear back from places like, you need more diversity. You need, more unique characters and people from different walks of life. And, in the Christmas movie world, I think that is sort of a big step forward. I assume drama is leading that well before the Christmas movies would be. So do you feel it's getting better at all, or not really?
I think it is getting a little bit better, but there was just this announcement about the Canadian Broadcasting Act bill, the change to Indigenous content. So I know that it probably doesn't necessarily apply to the majority of people or content creators, but for me, I've always believed that sometimes you have to force people to do something in order to make a shift. Like, I believe that, for example, and I'm sure you would remember this, at a time when Canadian content was like the worst content. Nobody wanted to watch Canadian content, and you were almost ashamed if you were like just doing Canadian content or just in a Canadian show, right?
Totally. It's still the insult that gets used if you watch something and say it looks too Canadian. Like, it's
Too
still
Canadian,
back to that.
absolutely. And we hear people, for those of us who are fluently kind of conversing with LA and Hollywood and the studio industry and whatnot, that what they think about our content, and that they're always, whether you're an actor and they're going to send you to dialect training, just to play one scene in an American TV series because they think you sound too Canadian. I mean, there's still that, but the analogy is really, I think that we, as Indigenous content creators or non-Indigenous content creators who are going to put more Indigenous people in all of their films and all of their roles, regardless of the content, like Sarah being in your movie, my sister being in your movie, like that's a huge deal for her and for all of us, because what that does is it says, I can kind of slide in and out of these mainstream commercial things without like wearing who I am and without making a statement, a cultural statement.
Right.
So, hopefully this change to the Broadcast Act will force people to be more inclusive with that broader sort of Indigenous content. And I think that's important because we have like almost intentionally been left out of the industry for a very long time. So I guess in answer to your question, it is changing a little bit, but I think that the real evidence of that will be, in what we're seeing on the screen in the next, let's say, 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting time. And I think generally as content creators, especially, you know, you started this question by talking about what we would do in a world without COVID and, you know, in the future. I do think we're going to come out of this different, whatever that is. Like, I'm not really sure how we're going to be different as content creators, but we're all adapting a little bit to a more technological or virtual or remote way of communicating. So I think the way we create, maybe not create content, but produce content in a, you know, as a production,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be different in the future. And I don't know really what that means, but I feel like we're moving into an entirely uncharted territory as storytellers.
Yeah, I agree. There was a there was a horror movie that just came out. I believe it was on Shudder, and it was just a 50-minute Zoom conversation. It was a bunch of friends. I forget what it's called. It was a bunch of friends doing a seance. It was a ghost movie, but it was just 50 minutes, and it was just a screen full of Zoom screens.
Wow.
And they shot it during the pandemic, and all the actors just set up their own Zoom, and they had some special effects and things in it, and that was the movie. So it was very, very creatively done.
That's interesting.
But yeah, you're right. We're certainly never going back to the same, but you do wonder what the new is going to look like.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, I know we have some questions that we want to ask each other.
Yeah, we need a moderator here. We're not doing very well.
All right. So I really feel like film, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like filmmaking is a really collaborative experience. And part of the reason why I love this industry and this business is because it's sort of a micro level reality of working with a group of people towards a common goal and completing that goal and being able to celebrate the results of that goal.
Mm-hmm.
I love that about filmmaking. There's so few things in the world, or, you know, so few careers where you can actually do that. And that's a little bit why being in this vacuum of Zoom and virtual and whatever's happening right now in the pandemic and how our industry is going to change, I'm a little bit, you know, afraid of that, of losing that human connection, right? For so many people, and also to a huge deficit. It is such a human industry where relationships matter, but sometimes people get really, I think it also can be very dangerous because people misunderstand the closeness that happens in the film world, and then they don't know how to have a real life relationship outside of the film world.
Right. Yeah.
That a lot, right? But my point being is that it's a collaborative business, and, you know, to say that you write, direct, produce, and edit, and do your graphics and do your music, I mean, that's great. If you can do that and harness that, you will definitely thrive and in this kind of scenario. But to me, if that's what I was doing, I would have to think of another career, because I love production meetings. I love working in groups of people. I love, you know, hearing everybody's voice, and I love everyone picking up, you know, tools and getting to work and making something happen and telling a story. And, you know, just it's like a project.
Definitely, yeah. And even the other day, I had a meeting, and it was a Microsoft version of Zoom or whatever, and I didn't have the grid view, so I couldn't see everybody's face. So when someone was done talking, we all just stared at that person until someone else had something to say. I couldn't look around the room and see what everyone else's body language was. I didn't know if anyone was agreeing with this person, disagreeing with this person. And that's just the difference between two different types of Zoom, right? Like, we're sort of starting to get used to Zoom, but not really. But, you know, when you consider how much more you gain from being in a room with people, absolutely, it's something that can't be replaced. And I don't think it will be. I don't think, you know, I'm sure there will be some, you know, some meetings and things that are going to be taking place virtually, but I don't think once you're into pre-production, I hope not. I hope that's not something people feel is a good substitute, because it's so many creative things happen when you're all in a room together. Like, no one's in this business because they're, you know, not a creative person. So Unless you have all those voices in one space, you're never going to get very far.
Have you shot during COVID?
I've shot a lot. Yeah, I'm starting my 4th after COVID movie next week. So it's
What do you mean after COVID movie?
the horror movie
Like,
wrapped on March 13th, and since then
oh,
I've done 4 movie of the week things. I've done one for Lifetime, a couple and for all movies of the week.
and now that you mention it, I have seen the pylons out there when I went to.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's fun still. Like
It's totally, it doesn't feel like once you're on set, it doesn't feel that much different. You check in with the nurse, everyone comes to the COVID test, everyone's wearing a mask, but once you're there, it doesn't feel that much different on set.
Yeah.
I got a location scout tomorrow. We'll do that. Everyone's in their own cars and everyone's standing 6 feet apart. But yeah, shooting doesn't feel that much different right now. So I don't know, maybe that gives me hope that it'll come back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else is on the list here? I feel like I'm gonna lose track if I just
Looking at the questions, I feel like this is a lot about young filmmakers and sort of breaking in ideas. So maybe we should touch on that before wrapping this up. So is there a technical aspect of filmmaking you consider yourself better at to be? What? I can't read either. What technically?
Don't worry, you don't need to really know how to read to be a director.
You don't. You don't.
No, not one of the prerequisites. To be a producer, on the other hand, you have to know, so I can read it for you.
Perfect. Is there something you've become technically proficient at to pursue filmmaking, I guess? Let's reword it that way.
Technical trick you've learned
I sort of broke into filmmaking from a technical standpoint. It's kind of backwards. I've always just been sort of a gadget guy. My parents had a video camera. I enjoyed picking it up even when I wasn't supposed to. And then I learned that if you plug a video camera into a VCR and then you plug a Walkman into the audio port, you can record to that VHS tape a video with sound behind it. And that just blew my mind. I was like, wow, it's just like a real video. So I went from there, and then I just started picking up cameras, filming stuff. And then I started on the technical and then just fell in love with the storytelling side of it. So I've always been sort of a jack of all trades. I worked professionally as an editor. I worked as a camera assistant. I worked as a DMT, the person who, manages and backs up footage on set. So I've from a technical standpoint, 10 years ago, I could make a film from start to finish, though lacking a few departments. But it really helps now because even though I can't do it, and I don't know what all the new lights are that are coming out, all these new LED fixtures and everything, I at least speak the language. So when I'm dealing with the DOP, I can tell them what's going on, or if I see a shadow, I know where it's coming from, or any issues, I can talk to them about that. In the edit, I can pass along notes to editors. If I just can't get my words clear, I can sit down and actually do it and put a scene in order the way I want it. So just having sort of a general overview of every piece of filmmaking, I feel is one of my greatest strengths as a director, is to have a good understanding of everything on set.
Yeah, I think that I'm probably very much like you in that sense, although I never harnessed sort of I wish I had, but the editing part, even though in my early years, like as a teenager, I was like tape to tape editing my movies. Definitely remember the VHS and the Walkman and the sound recording and editing, and my first movie was a horror movie, actually, and I did it as an independent study in grade 9, and it was kind of my way of exploring the technical side. I wanted to write, direct, produce, shoot, edit. I wanted to do everything on the movie. So I did that, and it taught me a lot of really important skills that I still use today. And I think what I would refer to myself, I guess, as a process hacker. I'm always looking for ways, like if someone says it can't be done, I'm going to find a way to do it. And I'm going to find a way to do it without compromising integrity of the story and integrity of, my people that I'm with, I don't want, I've worked on too many film sets as, you know, coming into the industry as, you know, fourth wardrobe assistant, PA, you know, the worst jobs you could ever have in the industry. And I watched how people treated people.
Mm-hmm.
I learned very quickly how much I wasn't a fan of hierarchy on film sets, and how when I'm going to become that director, producer, or whatever, I will never treat people like that. And I will never treat people like they are less than me. Like those are all really fundamental kind of things that I really took with me from a young age. So sort of in answer to the question, I think that ultimately when you're making movies and creating content, and you find yourself, if you're lucky enough to find yourself on set where you're actually making the film, the easiest way to achieve your goal is to step back and look at things from a, you know, from the perspective of an architect, I guess, because you're really taking pieces. You're always taking pieces and moving them around, whether it's on the page, on the screen, on the set, in the schedule. You know, you're always going to have your hands in all of those things. You know, it's the people who are listening here. I mean, we haven't really touched on the process of making a film, but let's say for those of you who are watching who don't realize what actually goes into making a schedule, that you have a feature film, all of that content has to be shot. What you're really doing is you're taking strips, right? You're taking scenes that are these kind of like lines in a schedule, scene 1, 2, 3, and you're maneuvering them. You're building a puzzle constantly. And that's the part I think is so fun, is like being an architect of and moving all of those pieces and talking to people and figuring out the best way to get from A to Z without harming the process.
Yesterday I was on set, and a perfect example of that is we had we needed the mom character for the movie, and we just couldn't find the actress. So we finally found her, cast her, and then brought her in. So yesterday we shot with her, and she was usually on the radio. This is a sort of an adventure movie. They're out in the forest. So she's usually on the radio, in her truck driving, or on a phone talking to someone else. So we shot her side of the scenes from start to finish of the movie all in one day. So we had 15 pages to shoot. I think it was like, I don't know, over 10 different scenes. And so we had a couple with another actor, but most of them was just her alone on the phone. And we had to film, we had to juggle it. We had to figure out, okay, well, these scenes are daytime, these are nighttime. So obviously daytime first, nighttime second. These ones are in the truck. So once we're in the truck, we don't want to bring the camera into the truck and then go back into the house and back into the truck later. So let's do these truck ones later on in the day. So the actress had to go from, oh, everything's great, here, have some muffins, to, oh my goodness, my son is lost in the forest and the forest's on fire, back to, oh, hey, how's it going? I wish you'd come by for Christmas dinner this weekend or whatever. So you not only have to figure it out for the crew and how to make that work, but you have to figure it out for the actor as well. You have to tell them, like, okay, now the smoke's coming in, you lost your son, you lost contact, he might be dead. And then the very next scene, okay, so your son hasn't been lost in the forest yet, there's no fires, you're just sitting down having muffins, everybody smile. And so jumping around is, as you say, it's just moving pieces, always moving pieces. So.
And, I was just working on another panel with some like Canadians who moved to the States, who moved to LA and did very big shows down there, and kind of exploring the reality that in Canadian content, for the majority of cases, the budget drives the creative, whereas in the States, it's often the creative drives the budget, because there are, not endless budgets, but much bigger budgets. So in that respect, especially when you're, trying to fit within, I would assume, a very fixed budget in your case, where there isn't a lot of leeway or, movement financially, that you're going to have to shoot a character out and all the locations out so that you don't have to bring that person back because you just don't have the money.
Exactly. Yes.
So in some ways, we're constantly, as Canadian content creators working in Canada on Canadian projects, trying to accommodate our vision and not compromise the vision, but also, work against these very, very tight and rigid budgets,
Yeah.
and then add to that. I don't know if your projects, are they union? These are union movies?
Union actors, but non-union
Actors. So,
crews.
add to that union regulations and rules, and like as soon as you get to a certain point, and everyone's, especially the crew unions, where everyone is like in an instant, everyone's going to be like, I'm taking a break, and everyone sort of just stops working and leaves the set. Whereas the actors union is a little bit different, and people are maybe a little bit more relaxed, but at the same time, that is also driving the end result, because it's pushing against the end result, because it does become a lot more difficult to achieve your goals when you're following so many rules.
Very much so, yeah. And how you treat your actors has a big effect on that. Not that we would ever, seriously break any of actors' rules, but if you are, if you're getting close to the end of the day and that actor's agreement was they don't have any overtime, and you have, one setup left, if they're into the project and they like the set and they want to make it work, then it's in their interest to do that extra take too. Because if they trust you and you tell them, look, we need this other angle, or the performance is going to come across as well, they're going to say, well, I want that for me.
Right.
Because if I don't look like if I'm not strong in this film, then that's going to affect my my future job. So they might say, like, oh yeah, let's get one more take, don't worry, we don't have to even though my agent said I didn't go into overtime, I'll go into overtime for half an hour today, just so we can get it done right. So
it's that part of the common vision and common objective, I think, that people tend to make concessions over, as long as they know they're not being taken advantage of.
Right. But you're right with crews especially, right? Like the what's a team of grips, they don't need you to get that extra shot. They're not going to give up their day, their money, and their time for you to get that extra angle. They're going to say, well, production's the one who overscheduled this day, so find more money, bring us back another day, give us another day's worth of work. So they're not going to go and give their time to a project that really doesn't benefit them in any way personally. It's their job, it's their livelihood. So they can't be getting home an hour late to see their children every single night just because some director like me can't get his day figured out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting process to have, be fixated on a goal to finish your day, but there are so many challenges that you come up against, and I'm sure that, it can be anything. It can be weather. Weather's a huge, wild card in terms of getting your day. And that's another moving piece. There's constantly, this puppet mastery or puzzle making that has to happen, where you're trying to, you always have to think fast, whether you're a director or a producer, or an AD, an assistant director. The team has to think so fast and be ready to put out any fire at any time to accommodate getting the day.
Yes.
If you don't get a day, if you don't finish your day, and you keep pushing scenes or a scene, these targeted opportunities that you push to the end of the schedule, or you say, oh, we'll get that later, something is going to be compromised.
Yes, and especially in Canada when extra days are hard to come by.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's what directing is. It's making decisions fast and being ready to decide on the next one. Because people will come in with every question you can think of, which photo album do you like? Do you want the muffins stacked or flat on a plate? Which plate do you want? And you have to be able to decide every single answer as quickly as possible, because there's 10 more questions coming right behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yep. And, also just on that note, when you're putting together a project, let's say are you also a producer on your shows or on your movies?
I'm new to producing. So I produce the horror film. I'm not a producer on the movies of the week.
So, the relationship between the director and the producer is such a special and delicate relationship, because oftentimes, the producer's main objective is to make the day. Like the director's main objective is to get get the shots and the
Yes,
performances. So the producer is, you know, typically at odds with the director. So it's a very, very delicate space to be working in, and it's important that that relationship is very strong and there's a mutual respect, and that everyone is on the same page, because the objective is the same, the end results objective is the same, but there are things that the producer cares about that the director does not care about, like, at
absolutely.
all, right?
Yeah.
So what would you identify maybe as some of the things that a director doesn't have to think about in a day, like when you're focused on, you know, on your shoot day?
Oh, like overtime. You know, hey, this actor has to be out by 4 o'clock, and then you say, well, we need that actor to finish off this scene, and we want to be shooting this scene until 6 o'clock. So now you are, you know, they're saying that's going to cost however many more thousands of dollars, and you have to push back against that producer to either convince them that actor can stay, um, or a way to work around it. And you have to be, if you're going to run up against producers who say, nope, they're out of here, figure it out.
Yeah.
And then multiple times I have, you know, shot that actor's coverage, and then just set up the scene so you don't have, you know, maybe you shoot a master and then their close up. But if you shoot their close up, make sure it's a clean close up, meaning there's no other actors in the frame, so that when you get the reverse, and it has to be clean because that actor has gone home, that it doesn't, you know, look weird in the edit. So yeah, that's it's certainly, you have to find someone you're comfortable fighting with and still friends with at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because if you fight with them and you can't make up, then they're not going to give you anything the next day.
Yeah.
But if you don't fight them, then they're going to make, you know, their budget and their life as easy as possible, and you're going to be struggling, and in the end, your project is going to suffer for it. So
I was watching the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, and I just think that the way it seems like the way they do things is so cool. Their directors kind of visit each other's sets, and
mm,
I don't know how they make it work, but because a set is traditionally a director's playground, right? That's the director is in charge there. So when there's other directors from other episodes that come to your set, um, there's a potential for that to get a little weird.
right, yeah, and then in episodic, you also have the showrunner, which is kind of the lead writer, kind of, you know, runs that entire project. So the director could be making decisions, but the showrunner really is in
Right.
charge of the story.
Right.
So they must be doing, so I haven't watched that behind the scenes stuff yet. Everyone talks about it. I really should
I
check
love
it out.
it. I love that stuff. I can watch behind the scenes like all day.
I'm the same. I've been doing, like, ever since it came out on DVD. I crave it, but I haven't watched the Mandalorian one yet because I haven't watched the show yet. So
Oh, yeah.
I'll get to it someday soon.
Okay, so next question. Next
Yes.
question. I have to get back into my phone here. Okay. That was a technical trick. So I don't think we really answered that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
I feel like we've answered that next one. How about what your favorite part of filmmaking is, and advice on how other people can get started? I feel like that's a good one.
you know, I see, and I think it's because the way I started is similar to you, like, you know, fiddling around with the video cameras and trying to record stuff. And it really was, I was fascinated with the craft of making it. Like, I like making stuff.
Hmm.
And I would say that it's a great place to start, which is by yourself or with a friend who has a similar interest, fiddling around with your technology and just figuring out how to make stuff. I think that's the best way. It's not even with a focus on the business or the industry, because ultimately that stuff is always changing, right? The business, the industry, the demand, the audience, everything is always changing. But what can't change is your passion and your desire to craft and to make stuff. You know, like, if the industry fell away tomorrow, I would still find a way to make stuff.
Right.
Like I just would. That's what filmmaking is. Like you can go into this and say, you know, oh, I want to be a big director. You can't become a big director, I don't think, by just walking onto a film set and directing. You walk onto the film set probably as a PA, you know, find a job as a PA, find a job as a locations manager, all of these things where you get to actually, come to think of it, not a locations manager, locations assistant. Locations and PA work is the shittiest job you can get. Like that's no lie. Like you're going to be the coldest, you're going to stand for the longest, you're going to be yelled at, you're going to be, you know, I don't know, treated not nice. But it's the best place to learn. Because if you can watch and, you know, kind of figure out how everything works and keep your ears and eyes open, and then go and fiddle around with your own technology and start making your own stuff with your friends, that is the real training ground for a filmmaker, I think.
Totally. I agree with everything except one thing, and that's finding someone with a similar interest to you. So the thing that's so unique about this business, and I love looking around a film set and just looking at all the faces and people we work with, is there obviously has to be an interest in film, but the different types of people it takes to make a film fascinates me. I think a gaffer couldn't be more different than a costume designer, right? Like one is so technically minded, and the safety of people's lives depend on their ability to understand electricity and how it's controlled. And the other person is probably the most creative. I guess they have some technical skills in how to use sewing machines and scissors and work with fabric, but it's really so much more of a creative thing. And, you know, as I said, I've worked in a lot of aspects of the industry, but there's still so many I haven't worked in. And I'm so grateful for the people who are experts in that. And we're all great friends. We are, you know, dramatically different types of people, but you can't catch me dead in front of a camera. I would never want to act in my life. But thank goodness people do, because I love working with them. We have very different, and a lot of actors could never imagine working behind the camera. It's not what they're interested in. So if you find someone who wants to be an actor and you want to be a director, or vice versa, it's really just they do have to share the common interest in film. But after that, it's such a diverse group of people that that come together to make a project. It's nice and very, very unique experience, I think, where, you know, an office probably has a lot of people who went to business school. A film set has people from everywhere.
Yeah.
What's your stance on film school? If someone asked you, do you recommend it?
That's a hard one. I don't want to be disrespectful and say, you know, no. Mm-hmm. But I think it depends on, you know, if you go to film school, like I believe in learning, I believe in higher learning. I think if you go to film school, you shouldn't stop making movies during that time.
Right.
Right. Like I think there is I went to York. I took film, but mostly for film theory, which has really nothing to do with, you know, the craft of making films. And I've done a lot of courses and classes and workshops and that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think that whatever you do, make sure that it's pushing your pursuit of your goal further, right? There are a lot of things that could halt your pursuit. A lot of choices that you could make that would, you know, take you off your path. Film school, I don't think will take you off your path of being a filmmaker. I think it could push you forward being a filmmaker. Oftentimes, like yourself, if you're coming from Ryerson, then someone's going to say, oh, hey, that kid from Ryerson, let's go with him instead of the kid who didn't go to Ryerson.
Yeah.
Right? Usually it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to Ryerson, but I didn't get into film. So I went for new media, which was adjacent to film. We had the same first year, but after that, and this is how little I knew about film, I said, oh, well, film is working with film. The future is digital, and I get to work with, you know, video and digital and websites and stuff over here in new media. So I'm going to stay there. And then I
Interesting.
get to fourth year and I realized, oh, they're actually learning how sets work and everything. I didn't learn any of that stuff.
And that's my point about the industry changes, but the craft, you know, the making stuff, the guts of that doesn't change.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
And that's
I'm old enough to say, like, I started when there were VHS recorders. Like, that's what we were making content on.
yeah.
And I've seen us go from 16 millimeter. You know, I remember sitting with Bruce McDonald, who directed a film I was in called Dance Me Outside. And I remember sitting with him with his big, is it called a Steinbeck?
Yeah. Yeah.
In like his production office. And it's this massive, you know, these film reels. And they were literally splicing the film and editing the movie. And being fascinated by that and thinking, you know, and being a part of that generation that really believed that you can only be a filmmaker if you're working with film.
Right.
And then I became a producer and thought, hell, I made my first film with short ends, right? This is when filmmakers were, I don't know, like 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when filmmakers were getting free short ends that were the dropping of the big film reels, and we were making movies on those short ends of 16 millimeter or whatever. But ultimately I couldn't afford that as a producer. So I went to a Canon XL1S consumer model camera with a 24p adapter to film my first dramatic series.
They shot 28 days later on that camera. Do you remember that movie?
After my series.
Yeah.
I remember that movie.
Started it.
Well, this is the thing, is we did this on a series, my first drama series called Moccasin Flats. And I remember thinking, like, how is nobody paying attention to the fact that we did this with the fucking you have to bleep that out. With the literal camera you could buy at the I don't know, at Best Buy. We didn't even have Best Buy then. I don't even know where we got it.
Yeah.
Henry's, I don't know, at a regular.
Yeah, no, same thing, but I went Panasonic. I went with the DVX 100 because it shot.
We use that too.
24p with 3 pull down. I still remember how excited I was about that.
That was a really exciting time. And then, you know, with the introduction of Final Cut Pro and like what Apple was doing, like all of that stuff just put the technology and the resources into your hands.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that didn't change the kind of filmmaker I was. It just gave me more access.
Right.
So
and I'm guessing you had to work some sort of summer job to save up for that Sony camera. I know that's what I did. I was working at Coca-Cola, stacking pop. I dug swimming pools also I could save up for that camera. Now you can go get, you know, a 2-year-old iPhone for next to nothing and start making a movie.
You say summer job because you're probably younger than I am. I'm 47 years old. So when I was doing it, I already owned my own production company when this was happening.
Right. Well,
my summer job was like doing shitty corporate videos.
That's,
20-hour days, sleeping on the couch at the office. Like, I was 25 years old, just trying to hustle so hard to make content and filling out grants so we can buy a Canon XL1 and a DVX and a JVC Pro and all these, like, you know, and Final Cut. I'm sure we had some hacked versions at the time, but we were just so desperate to make content that we were like consuming it all, right? It was an interesting time, but I think that time has arrived again, where, you know, the phones and the technology, and you can literally make a movie on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
But a movie is not a movie just because you have the technology or just because you have the tools and the resources. A movie is a movie because of the storytellers and the creators behind it who are crafting it to be appealing to people who want to watch it.
I think that's the advice I needed when I was first starting out. I was convinced that the technology made the movie. And I said, there's a new camera that shoots 24 frames. That's going to make me a filmmaker. I'd buy that. All right, I'm a filmmaker now. Oh, no, I don't have a good microphone. I better save up and buy that. And same thing, I just kept thinking, that this next piece of gear is going to make me a filmmaker. And it took me way too long to realize that you have to make content and all this stuff doesn't matter. It's helpful, but it doesn't matter. It's the other side of it that's so important. So I guess I think that's the theme of this whole conversation is you have to make stuff. There's no one thing you can learn to get good at it. You have to learn everything. And you're never going to stop. I'm still learning things every day. And the more you learn within every single aspect of film, I think the better and more successful people can be at it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's crucial to keep learning. So yes, to your answer about film school. But again, to the flip side, I think there's a lot of amazing courses and workshops that you can take that, don't involve film school. And, if you can access the technology and start to shoot and edit and write and explore, I mean, yeah, like some of the best movies I've seen have been done by, young people who are doing movies for their first time. And it's just miraculous, like what you can do. There was a time, I know we're almost out of time, we're probably way out of time, but I went to
How long is
Sundance.
it supposed to be?
I think an hour. I went to Sundance I'm not really sure when it was. It was easily 20 years ago or more, 20 something years ago. And there was a program of filmmakers that were just starting out. And there was this one guy who was I think he was in school to be an engineer. And he decided to drop out of school, and I think he worked at Kodak in his spare time, in his summer job. And he started to collect these short ends of film reels. And he decided to write the sci-fi movie, a time travel movie. And he wrote it and shot it with short ends, the entire feature film, starred in it. And the whole entire cast and crew was like, every section in the credits was the same 6 people. Like from catering to gaffer to grip to sound to whatever. And it was, his access point was the short ends, because he just had to get the camera. But, right. I remember seeing that movie and just I fell in love again with the craft. Mm-hmm. So all that to say, you really need a good story and a dedicated team. And every good film has a good leader with a good vision, and an entire team to support that vision, in a passionate and non-competitive way.
I feel like that's our perfect out.